I once trusted her completely, so much that I gave her my whole life, my future. But in a single moment, everything I had was mercilessly shattered: my honor, my love, my trust, all betrayed and torn apart by the very hand that once held me tight when I was at my weakest. I didn't just lose someone, I lost myself. And then, in the depths of that devastation, I began a journey no one could have expected, a journey to forgive the one who destroyed me. I didn't just lose someone. I lost myself. Back then, when everything came crashing down, I couldn't believe what was happening. The person I loved, trusted, and protected like they were my entire world turned out to be the one who completely broke me. A blatant betrayal. A stab in the back, deep and cold. It wasn't just about being emotionally rejected, it was the destruction of my dignity, my career, my relationships. Everything collapsed all at once. I used to be strong. But in that moment, I fell apart. At first, there was confusion. Then anger. And eventually, silence, a deadly silence that lasted for months. I disappeared from social media, avoided friends and family. My room became a prison, sealed with 4 cold walls and echoing memories that wouldn't stop replaying. My mind became a battlefield, rage clashing with pain in an endless loop. Sometimes I wanted revenge. Other times, I just wanted to disappear. But the most painful part wasn't what she did, it was that I didn't see it coming. Or worse, I did, and still chose to believe. Trust, something so small, was the first thing to be crushed. I used to think I'd never forgive. That some wounds never heal, that some people don't deserve forgiveness. But deep down, in the sleepless nights, I began to realize, if I kept clinging to this hatred, I'd forever remain a victim. And that was when a different seed began to sprout, the beginning of a new journey. A journey of facing it all, understanding, and eventually letting go. But first, I had to get out of the wreckage. I had to stand up. Even if it was just one small step into the darkness. He couldn't get back up right away. Everything inside him was still tangled, still heavy, like a boulder pressing down on his chest. But one morning, as sunlight slipped through a crack in the window, he suddenly realized, if he kept sitting in the dark, he would slowly die inside the very pain he was clinging to. So he left. No warning. No real luggage. Just a backpack and a pair of hollow eyes. He chose places far from the old city, places where no one knew his name, where memories couldn't cling to every corner of the street. In the beginning, he remained silent. His body moved, but his soul felt stranded. He would sit for hours beside a stream, watching the water flow past, asking himself, could pain drift away like that? Would I ever feel life again, beyond anger and ruin? Time away didn't heal him right away. But it gave him space to breathe. He started writing again, not to complain, but to face what had happened, like someone dissecting a wound to understand it. He also met strangers, genuine, wounded souls. An old gardener who lost his son in an accident. A young woman who had been scammed by someone she loved. They didn't offer advice. They didn't judge. They simply shared their stories and kept living. Their stories seeped into him, like medicine without color or scent, subtle but deeply absorbing. He began to wonder, had I ever unknowingly hurt someone the way I was hurt? And maybe the one who destroyed me, was she just another broken person carrying wounds of her own? And in that quiet reflection, for the first time, he no longer felt anger when thinking about the past. What he felt instead was stillness. Gentle. Honest. And in that moment, he knew. He was getting closer to something deeper. Not forgetting, but a new beginning. One rainy afternoon in the mountains where he had stopped to rest, he was sitting in a small roadside cafe when he overheard a stranger say, "Forgiveness isn't about whether they deserve it, it's about whether you deserve peace." The words hit him like lightning on a clear day. He froze. All this time, he thought he had been trying to forget, to move on. But deep down, he had been holding on to a quiet grudge, like armor he believed would protect him from ever being hurt again. But that armor was too heavy. It was wearing him down. That night, he sat down and wrote a letter. Not to send, just to write. The first words were shaky, angry. But slowly, they turned into an honest conversation with himself. He wrote about the pain, the questions that never got answered, the sleepless nights, and the moments he almost disappeared from the world. Then he wrote about her no longer as the betrayer, but as a person. Flawed, fragile, maybe carrying her own pain, a pain he had never seen. He didn't excuse her, but he also didn't condemn her. And for the first time in months, he cried. Not from pain, but from release. As if a door inside his heart had quietly opened, no drama, no noise, just a small sliver of light cutting through the dark. From that moment on, he began to speak of the past differently. No longer avoiding it. No longer drowning in it. He came to understand that forgiveness isn't erasure, it's putting the past where it belongs, behind you. In that moment, he no longer saw himself as a victim. He was someone who chose. And he chose to let go. Not because he was weak, but because he finally knew he deserved the peace he had lost for far too long. He came back. No noise. No announcement. Just quietly returned to the old city, the place that had once carved the deepest wounds into his life. But this time, he wasn't the same man. Everything looked the same, familiar streets, the corner cafe, the warm glow of streetlights at night. But something inside him had changed. There was no more heaviness when he walked past the places tied to painful memories. No more sinking feeling when he heard the name that used to twist his heart. And then, the inevitable happened, he saw her again. It was unexpected, almost too perfectly timed to be random. He looked at her. Not with bitterness. Not with a need to hide his scars. Just a steady, clear gaze. Calm. Almost unnervingly at peace. She hesitated, maybe expecting him to walk away, or lash out. But he didn't do either. He simply said, I used to hate you. But not anymore. No apology needed. No explanation expected. Because the forgiveness he had been searching for all this time wasn't meant for her. It was meant for himself. That quiet exchange, brief and uneventful on the surface, was, to him, the closing chapter of a long, storm-filled part of his life. A chapter he didn't conquer by defeating someone else, but by finally understanding himself. As he turned and walked away that day, he knew he had truly put the past down. Not by forcing himself to forget, but by accepting that it happened, and choosing to let it no longer define him. And in that moment, he felt it clearly, deeply. Peace was never somewhere far away. It began with a simple nod. To himself. From that day on, he began to truly live again, not just survive, but live. No more gloomy mornings spent hiding under the covers, avoiding the sunlight. No more sleepless nights drowning in memories, trying to decode why she betrayed him. His mind had grown larger, not because he had forgotten, but because he was now strong enough to hold both the pain and the healing. He returned to his old job, but with a different spirit. No longer chasing competition, no longer hungry for recognition to fill a void. He worked for the passion, for the quiet joy of contributing something meaningful even in the smallest things. Friends were surprised. One asked him, "How did you manage to forgive?" He just smiled. He didn't answer right away. Because how could he explain a journey like that in a few words? Forgiveness didn't arrive overnight. It came after countless sleepless nights, silent fractures, unanswered questions, and finally, a quiet but powerful choice. He began to share his story. Not to reopen the past, but to reach those still stuck in their pain, as he once had been. He didn't offer advice, just spoke with honesty and calm, as living proof that pain might never fully disappear. But it does get lighter when we stop carrying it alone. Each day, he kept a small moment of silence for himself. To be grateful for the journey he had walked. Even for those who had hurt him. Because they, knowingly or not, had pushed him to the edge. A place where he was finally forced to turn inward. And learn how to let go. Now, he lives. Without regret. without fear. Because he knows. Peace isn't the absence of storms. It's the strength to stand in the storm, with a heart no longer burdened by resentment. Now, looking back, he no longer sees himself as the victim in that old story. He sees a person who once broke down, once held on to anger, once wanted to disappear. But who chose to rise? To forgive. To keep living. Not out of nobility, but simply because he realized no one deserves the power to control his emotions forever except him. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It just makes sure the past no longer weighs him down. And if you're carrying a wound in your heart, a betrayal, a silent ache with no name, know this. You don't have to forget. You don't have to rush to forgive. You only need the courage to begin facing it. One day, when you finally release what's been choking you for so long, you'll understand. Peace doesn't come from someone else. It's the gift you give to yourself.